artificial intelligence, AI, generative video. Sure, I can make myself look like anything right now, but is that good? AI is a huge question the creative industry is facing. We're facing it as an agency, we're facing it as creatives, we're facing it as producers. Today we're going to be talking with Bill Phillips, our EP at Coronation, and Peter Ferguson, an animation director, and we're going to be asking some of the big questions. What does AI mean for the creative industry? What does it mean for our agency? What do we think about it? Do we have all the answers? No. But we hopefully have some interesting perspectives. Welcome to Heralds and Fools, the podcast where we talk shop. We talk about client projects, passion projects, the nitty-gritty details of what makes creative life so fun. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Gary.
How's it going?
Going good.
When you were young, drawing your first picture, sketching on a piece of paper, did you ever think a robot would come and steal that joy from you?
I still don't feel like it can steal my joy.
Good.
Even if it can draw better than me, I'm sure it could steal my job.
So that is what I want to talk about. So obviously 2024, I feel like was marked by like serious progression in generative images, and generative video and generative music. And here we are, a little animation and film company out trying to do our thing, and it's shaping and changing the industry. So just want to talk about our reflections on that, the threats of it, the opportunities with it, and all of that. So Bill, when you look at the landscape of where we are with generative video, what are your feelings on the matter?
It's a broad question.
It is a broad question.
It's a broad question. I mean, I think, there's a couple of factors when you consider AI's use in the market, particularly by in-house. I mean, all of the things that I have to talk about are all marketing kind of material. So
we should say Bill is our executive producer. He thinks about things like strategically and deployment, and Peter is on the tools. You're making stuff, you're guiding projects creatively. Mm-hmm. And that's where I am too.
We're going to
have different perspectives on this. And I think that's okay. I think one thing is like, certainly there is no expert on what AI means for the creative industry. This is like new. A lot of us have different opinions. There are people who wield the tools really well, but they don't even know what the repercussions are it's going to be. We're at an inflection point where this new thing happened and it could lead in a whole bunch of different directions. So we are not experts on this.
Right.
And I don't really think anyone's a super expert on this as far as how it'll impact the creative world. So these are our opinions. These are sort of things we've been mulling over and thinking about how we've interacted with AI, but it's certainly not like, these aren't rules to live by. They're just our reflections. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how are you thinking about it?
I mean, I think that it's opened up another category of content development. So when you think about just the volume of content and the cost of content, it's created a new kind of category of people being able to produce things by themselves. And that's both good and bad. And it lowers the bar as far as the technical understanding that's necessary to be able to produce content. But then at the same time, it also lowers the bar of all of the other things that are around that, all of the
expectations,
all of the knowledge of how to use that content or how to do the artistry around it. So it's a valuable tool insofar as it lowers that bar, but then that also means it's equally, it can be a dangerous tool insofar as it can produce a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece of it that I'm most wary about is the volume of just stuff going out into the space, because it doesn't require a lot of thought. It doesn't require someone to be an expert or an artist to be able to produce it.
Yeah.
You can just create anything on a lark, on a whim. You just go, oh yeah, let's do this or that.
There'd be a lot of pushback from like AI forward artists about that. And that even that term, like an AI artist is like a very strange term that it's hard to wrap my mind around. There'd be a lot of pushback because there's like, well, I use like 6 different AI programs and I kit bash them together. Like, what are you talking about? There's no artistry. Like, you didn't know how to like use Hailu versus Sora versus VO and then put it all together and train my own language model for consistency. I think that there are new categories of like potential craftsmanship of like how people can utilize these things. But in general, I agree with you.
The broader market, and there's always an exception in any craft of people using it in a new way or in a creative way. And I don't discount like the skill set required to be able to consider these things in tandem and be able to write the correct prompts and all of that. And there are people in the space that are using it well, which I'm sure we'll talk about too. Sure. But this is just a reflection on the general market, the people who are not traditional artists who now have this tool available to them. It's almost like, I don't know if it makes sense to compare it to like a Canva rollout as far as like,
it's a fair comparison.
It lowers.
Explain that.
Yeah. So, I don't know when Canva came out.
Yeah.
But it used to be like, okay, I need my professional design software. I need my Photoshop. I need my InDesign, my Illustrator, all those things, the Adobe suite to be able to produce decent social media content. And then when Canva came out, it's like, okay, here's everything. It's templated. It's already built out. It's web-based.
Yes.
And it suddenly became the case where people could do their own social media.
Yeah, the cost of entry was lower. And if you roll the clock back further, it would be like I know a graphic designer who was like a graphic designer in the 70s, 80s. And he was like, when Photoshop came out, I didn't learn it purposefully because I thought it was fake graphic design. And he would do it all through older tools and many like real sign making techniques. And he thought Photoshop was a horrible golem that he didn't want to touch and that it was like something, and he never learned it.
Yep.
And then he waited, 20, 30 years and he tried to teach it to himself.
It seems like the same conversation over and over whenever there's a new technology introduced. It creates a new baseline and then you build on that from there. And that's
right.
Peter, your background is you're a fine artist, traditionally trained artist. You went to art school. You did basically apprenticeships in art. How do you feel? Like you're sitting in a completely different place from someone like me. I came from film and like After Effects animation and stuff.
I think there's going to be a lot of negative consequences. I mean, I guess I would compare it to the Industrial Revolution. It's like, oh, now they have mechanized looms. Like, what's going to happen? And it's like, how can we even tell the gravity of this is going to just continue for so long?
Yeah.
And so I'm just personally, I'm just trying to kind of experiment with it, in experimental ways. I don't give it too much. Like I wouldn't specialize in AI.
Yeah.
Because I think I like to have my foot in the traditional principles and understand what I'm doing.
Yes.
And then there's a certain level of like opacity to the AI thing because it's doing its own thing. And so I would never be comfortable completely, just listening to what its response is. But Christian actually called it a calculator, which I thought was like it's like it can kind of speed stuff up.
Yeah.
Certain things that are just like, for me, like that's what I think is most positive about it is that like when it acts like a calculator, it's like, well, I could sit here and do math for, I could do this analog.
Yeah.
But if I have a calculator, this isn't going to like change the vision of this thing.
Yeah.
I just need to know what the answer is and I can like continue.
Yeah.
So that's how I think it's helpful there.
At the same time, to reinforce what you're saying about, the traditional principles around it is they make you learn long division and multiplication, and you learn the principles of it first
before they give you the TI-83,
and then you get the calculator, and then you can, it reduces the tedium, but you understand what it's doing and you know how to use it well. They taught us that same way up in up through college in psychology, we would do these like really long form, like multiple page problems of statistical problems, and the professors there would force you to learn that first, so that you had not only an appreciation for what the program did, but just like a natural baseline understanding of what was happening.
Yeah.
So that you knew how to use it, and what was like you just weren't some person pushing buttons, but you were an actual, I mean, I guess a technician of sorts
Yeah.
Yes.
with the machine.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I think that's how I feel comfortable if it's in tandem with a knowledge of what you're asking it about. Because otherwise, how do you discern whether it's giving you good answers or not? Because it's like half the time I use AI, I'm like, this is garbage. But every once in a while, it's like, that's interesting.
Yeah. And that's because you feel like your training or traditional training and your eye has been formed, so you can recognize when it is good or isn't good.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope, but I mean, I've fallen into pits where I rely on it too much, and I look back and I'm like, this is garbage. Like that, I kind of gave it too much credence here. So that's been a learning curve in itself. I've been like, this is not like a garment to like the Holy of Holies here,
I think the crazy part about AI's progression is it's been so freaking rapid. Because I don't even remember what the date was when ChatGPT came out or generative images started happening. And I feel like it's around 2020 is when this was
2022.
happening. 2022. Wow.
That's fast.
Yeah, it's fast. Because I remember when I started playing with some of this early stuff, and I would bring it to our all hands meetings, and I was making these cursed images that were genuinely haunting and weird, not purposefully. It was just what it was capable of.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, we gotta keep our eyes on this. This is a thing. It came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Before you had to draw, now it's just making images of weird demons. What's going on?
Right.
And then it felt like every week there was another huge leap in the capabilities. And I don't remember when the turning point was, but I feel like a turning point happened in something like 2023 where it's like, okay, it's inevitable. Like it's going to make very close to photoreal images. And I will say that I don't think we ever came to a solution based on keeping our eyes on it, but it's certainly been, I think, a growing thing to contend with and like how it incorporates in a pipeline. We don't use AI functionally at the studio on a day-to-day basis in image creation, unless that's something that you are doing that I'm unaware of, but which could be, I don't know. But I think like it's not like something that we rely on or something that we've like heavily indexed on in our pipeline. Like we haven't done that.
Yeah, I think it's going to become more porous in the sense that like if you do a Google search now, it gives you an AI kind of summary often, and so if you're reading those and you're using AI, I think it's just going to seep more into kind of like everyday tech, and so in that sense, I feel like a lot of people are probably inadvertently using it.
And even like Photoshop, Adobe has basically planted their flag. This is the future. This is what we're doing. And it's built into Photoshop and things like generative fill. And those are definitely within the context of the software now. And I do use that. But I would say like going so far as something like Mid-Journey and generating final images that we're putting into videos or something like that, or like using something like Sora or Runway. I've played a lot with it. I've made short films with it that I won't post. I've had a lot of fun with it. I've made animations with it. I've done all of that, and I've never found it to have the appeal necessary to cross into something that I would consider final. That's kind of like where I'm at with it as an individual. I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's where I'm at with it as an individual.
Yeah.
And as far as like company use of AI goes too, there is something of like a creative moat that is a separation between what the tool can do and what an artist can do with that tool. And so I think that like the line for me has always been, well, I'm not going to try to put anything that is strictly generated directly into a final deliverable at any point ever. It's like there is no place where something could be not considered and put into the practice, because it needs to have like the appropriate kind of use case.
Intention
the
behind it.
intention behind it, exactly. And I think it's a fantastic tool as far as like getting to a certain point, but then I feel like we're still at that level of where AI is, where it's still valuable to take over and say, great, yeah, that's helpful, I don't know, ideation.
Sure.
And
well,
then
that
you
was
pick it up
something
and
you
run with
were
it.
playing with too, right? Is like helping it, using it to like come up with rapid, different ideas to see them quickly, right? Like that was something you tried to incorporate in Midjourney.
Something coming to mind. I was like reading Stephen Sondheim has this book, I Made a Hat. Look, I Made a Hat, and it's just about like lyric writing.
Okay.
And I haven't read much of it. I just read the first chapter, and he was giving advice, and he was just like, get a rhyming dictionary.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this really well-known lyricist here is like using a rhyming dictionary, which, is essentially a calculator in the sense of like, he doesn't know all of the rhyming words to this certain word. Like he's saving time by having this tool that has like, the 100 words that rhyme with this word. And it's just taking out, there's only so many of them,
Right.
There's a limit to how many rhyming words are with this. And I think that impulse feels very similar to how I view AI. It's just like, I just need a rhyming dictionary. I'm not going to like have it write my poetry.
Yeah.
But if I can find out quickly how many, if I'm stuck and I want to rhyme with this word and I just need to know what all the words are that rhyme with it, it's those types of things that's like, you can start to lose momentum. And if you need to be productive and get something to a place in a certain amount of time, you start to reach for those things. Can you reach for those things too much? Probably. I usually have more of a problem where I'm not, I'm slowing down too much and I'm hitting a wall. So I try to use it that way.
Yeah.
Where it's just,
what does that look like practically, right? So you have that example, right, of the rhyming dictionary, but like in a creative process, what would that be like?
Let's take concept art. So, for example, the thing we're working on right now, a 3D animated thing about a graveyard, is concept art. We need to know what's in this graveyard. ChatGPT, like, give me every possible thing that you might find in a graveyard. Just make it a bullet point list.
Mm-hmm.
And it has tons of things I wouldn't have thought of in the moment. And it's just like, and then I'll like put it away, and then I'm riffing, and I'm not using it. I'm like drawing.
Yeah.
But that's not the only. I'll look at images of graveyards. It's just interesting that you're using AI. You're really cheating at this point. And it's like, if you use Google,
you're cheating at this point.
You're cheating.
Yeah.
Like if you use anything, I don't know. I find that to overemphasize this over using Google Images, or a book. Those are technology. Those are like the ways to get to something quicker. So I just hesitate to be like, I have reservations about it, but I'm just like, it doesn't feel that different to me than using a rhyming dictionary.
There's no award for the person that goes to the library and is like, I would like the microfilm. Please. Yeah, it's like it's like if you could just search it on Google and then spend your time instead doing the creative work. I mean, I think that there's definitely space for it to kind of clear those creative hurdles, or I mean, really not hurdles. It's like the slog.
Yeah.
Yes.
It can shortcut some of the components of the creative endeavor that are more, I don't know, just more rote.
I think there are two documentaries that any creative should watch if they are worried about and or processing the AI revolution. The first one is Tim's Vermeer, which is an older documentary, and then Light and Magic, which is the history of ILM. I think these for some reason, these are the two documentaries that come up for me. The ILM one is easy. Most people know about Industrial Light and Magic. They are the pioneering visual effects company behind every good, special effects movie. Many of the great special effects movies. They were the people who made Star Wars possible. They went through a revolution where special effects moved into visual effects. There's a great anecdote in that documentary from a woman who moved from the practical effects shop into the computer effects shop. And she was she's one of the people there with the longest tenure because she recognized that you could be creative in special effects and then you can be creative in computer effects. And just because it's in a box now and just because you're using a desktop now, it doesn't change the creative process fundamentally. Right. Tim's Vermeer is a great documentary because it basically proves, as close to scientifically as possible, that Vermeer used a camera obscura in order to paint his paintings, which means that he had a lens that he would put on the wall that would project. He'd be in a little black box, and he would sit in the black box or something like that. And there was a lens that would project the image of a room in front of him, and then he would paint that and try to match the light of the projection. Vermeer is a better artist than anyone who is listening to this podcast. There's not a single human on the planet right now who would be better than Vermeer. And you can replicate his process scientifically. Mm-hmm. I think we have this idea that like artists have to be like these little perfect people who are connected to the muses and the information from the universe drips down to you and then you just effuse this beautiful artwork. But art is technical. And in order to be an artist, you have to be a craftsman. Yes. And to be a craftsman, you have to leverage tools. Right. And even the greats, Da Vinci leveraged tools. Vermeer is using a camera obscura. I don't think this is dissimilar from AI.
No, I think it's really strange that you bring that up because when I watched Tim's Vermeer, I got really intrigued by, okay, where did the camera obscura come from? And it was some mathematician. There was some legend about this mathematician, Islam Golden Age situation where he basically invented the scientific method, and that camera obscura was something he came up with. Well, I was just researching earlier, and the origin of the word algorithm is some Latin translation. It's not the same guy, but he's also an Islamic guy from the same time Islamic period. Golden Age. And basically was like the ancestor of algebra and algorithms. And it does seem that I don't really know how that relates. I just find there's something there.
It's the art and the science of the thing coming together.
Yes.
Which has always been the history of motion pictures. It's always been art and science smashing together.
And I think it's testament to that art science fusion that it's been able to portray the romance of it the entire time.
Explain.
So you have in your mind's eye, you have the artist that just is receiving this inspiration and is, it's just spontaneously generating pure creativity.
Yeah.
And that artist is actually that combination of a craftsman and and an artist.
Yeah.
There's something with it, where it's basically they did their job well.
Who did?
The artist did their job well if they are portraying the romantic, creative act of art as just purely that. Because it's not that.
No, it's not.
But the fact that everybody kind of perceives it as that is part of the artist's job of making something beautiful and making something interesting and mysterious and cool.
Yeah.
Is, just kind of, there's something of a black box thing to it.
Yeah. It's
there's like a majesty to the creative act that I think, even though these kinds of things like AI and these other tools are there for it, I don't know. I think it's just there's got to be that next level of just romanticization again of what it is. I don't know.
I think the term that keeps coming to mind for me is grace building on nature, because I think there is a mystical side to the creative act, but I think it's kind of born out of technical, it kind of grows out of a technical understanding of things, which is a more analytical, scientific kind of the ability to manipulate things. And to manipulate things, you have to understand their properties. Now you're in a scientific, analytical kind of world there. And you get that, and then you're more able to, now the concept that I always heard is like those things become second nature. So these kind of analytical things you have to learn become second nature. And once they're kind of like in the background, your mind's kind of open up again to like new horizons. And now it's in a more kind of a, open-ended, and that's where the kind of inspiration from God or your view on the world, they start to manifest.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mystical side of it, but people they conflate that with technical stuff, and they're not the same.
No.
They conflate grace with nature.
Yeah.
And it's been really, like, I'll try to teach art classes, and some of these kids will not, I'm like, I'm not asking you to do anything complicated. Like, they're like, well, I'm not an artist. I can't do things. I can't see things that way. I'm like, I'm asking you to draw a straight line with a ruler, you know? And like, I'm like, think of it like algebra class. Like I just drew it on the board. Can you draw it on your paper? Here's a ruler. Like but there's like they perceive it to be like a mystical thing. And I think that is a roadblock for people.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Cause I think there's like a weird like, analog you can make with like a really good athlete.
Yeah, I was
right?
going to say,
a really good athlete. Because if you look at like people at the top of their class, right? You look at like Michael Jordan. It looks like magic when he's doing what he's doing. And is there natural talent, and is that a little mystical? Yeah, that's really awesome. Is there an insane amount of technical know-how that he has accrued over the years and trained? Yes. Are there ways of doing things that he learned from other people? Yes. And so I think that that's one of those things where it's like, but then when you get to the end of it and he is doing what he's doing, that is magical. That is a magical thing. When Vermeer hangs the painting on the wall, that's a magical thing. The technical, and I think that's maybe what you were saying, is like, as long as the end result is something that is true and gives us wonder and is portraying actual beauty, that is something that is the artist doing his job and romanticizes the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Thanks for.
No, it's good.
Yeah. No, and I think another interesting conversation to have would be like the classic John Henry story.
Love it.
Of how
specifically the Disney short film version of it,
which is
fantastic.
Very good. But like, I mean, you have this man versus machine thing.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, what are the limits of human ability? And the whole time, I mean, you have this machine that can dig this tunnel, and then you have John Henry, who is at like the apex of human ability to dig a tunnel. And you're rooting for the human the whole time. And like, there's a guy in the machine that's, pulling the levers and stuff, but you don't care about that guy. You don't want him to win. Like, like he's up there. Sure. He's pulling the levers, but at the end of the day, it's a machine beating a man. And like that, there's something that's just like problematic at a core level I think for people to grapple with that and be like, why, like this, there's something that's just not, it doesn't speak to the human person to say, here's a machine that just does it and it's no problem and there it goes. And I think that AI kind of has that, it has the danger of becoming that, where you have the human person that's like, I'm going to do this through my own blood, sweat, and tears. And then you have this machine where you've got the person and they're just pulling levers and they're very comfortable. And then over on the side is this artist who's dying, like at the end of this thing, he's just like brute forcing it.
Yeah.
And then the other guy, just steps out of the machine at the end and he's like, all right,
yeah,
another day at the job, digging a tunnel.
I think the difference, I think that there's an implicit thing there too, where it's like an artist there's toil in art, obviously. Like there's toil in art, but we do romanticize the toil of art a little bit. Like we do like the struggling artist, and we do like the tortured artist, and we are attracted to these archetypes. But at the end of the day, what makes the artist good is not the toil, it is what the artist produces. So that's where the value is in the art. I think there's value within the art itself. Mm-hmm. Whereas so if it's just a machine that makes art, even if there's no toil, I don't think there's an implicit attraction. I've never, and maybe there are people this works for. I have never seen a piece of purely generative art where I have been like moved by it.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the content is.
Right.
I immediately, and maybe this is like something where maybe my eye is trained. Maybe other people don't have this experience. But I have not been moved by a single piece of AI artwork. Mm-hmm. Even if it has some of the rules. So I don't even know what that is. Mm-hmm. But I can I immediately recognize that it's AI. I immediately sort it as being unimportant. And I immediately discard it as noise.
It's disposable.
Super disposable.
It's disposable because there's it's just a dime a dozen for what it is.
Yeah.
That's part of the noise of it. That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Is like, because you can create it so easily, it's not as valuable. Even if it is something that is similarly attuned to a final product. Like when you think about the Coca-Cola ad that they did shot for shot,
which is awful.
And there's people that were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, like what's different about this?" Like they didn't recognize that the people are weird and like there's like
the wheels
strange,
aren't moving on the truck.
Yeah. But I think that
we are in right now. I think we're in the mire of what AI is causing all of us to do. It's like even like we don't know how to sort this thing. We have distaste for it with the acknowledgement that some people do not see the difference.
Yeah.
We have the
Which
desire
is kind of deflating because you're like, oh, you don't have a critical,
yeah,
like a discerning. And then you kind of realize that's been the hard part for me is to realize that people don't care about art the same way I do, where they don't have and it's not a judgment. It's just like, oh, a lot of people just look at imagery just like with not much attention.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that works. It's like, oh, it does?
Yes.
Like, oh. And so that was just kind of like a cultural, like.
It's a cold bath of water.
It's just like, okay, a lot of people don't give as much credence to images as I do. It'd be like, I'm not a car guy.
Yeah.
Like, give me any old car. Sounds good, but some car guy is going to be like, oh, damn, really? Like, it's like, well, it's just like, I'm just not thinking about cars, man. It's nothing against you.
Yeah,
and I
that's
just
fair.
think that about like images. Like,
I'm not a sports guy.
It's just like, oh, okay. I guess I'm just like a person that likes images a lot. And
I'm not a sports
Sort of
guy.
deflating.
I don't care if my team loses or wins. I don't have any emotional response at all.
I mean,
this is deflating. I mean, it's deflating.
It's
because you start if you're someone into the arts, you're like, this is the most important thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing more important than this. And then you see a big group put out like a big, they put out a short film or they put out like a promotional image of something. And you've spent years perfecting your ability to like make a beautiful image. And then they put out an image and it's like, dude's got 6 fingers. You're like, and no one cares. And you're like, this is very upsetting.
Yeah.
I think that,
It's so true.
I don't think we're the first people to that deflation.
No.
If you say, like, I mean, like you think about restaurants and chefs and, like people that are in the culinary world going up against like a McDonald's or something. You're always going to have the people that are perfectly happy with a Big Mac.
Yeah.
And like they don't want all of the nuance and all of the all the flavor profiles and all of the consideration that you're putting into this thing. They're like, okay, yeah, I'll take a Big Mac. And it's like there's cheating in that too. And like the fast food world is like, I'm gonna load it up with all these things. And
yes, but in your example, a really good restaurant is better for you than McDonald's.
Well, I'd make the same argument in this scenario too.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I do think regardless as to like, I do think even if the world can't recognize, as an artist, I will put my flag in the ground
Yeah.
and say whether or not you realize the value, a human created artwork has more implicit value and technically in its essence has more value than and is better for you and healthier for you than artwork created by AI.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
That's a good point.
Fight me.
No, like the whole health thing. It's like the person consuming it might not realize it's affecting them, but there is an objectivity to its quality that will have an impact on them.
Yeah. And I think that what it's going to do, I mean, it's going to remove, I think, the middle ground of a lot of it. It's going to polarize the art space between, your fast food AI, whatever you want to call like the very base level production of it.
AI.
McGPT, and your artists and your consideration on that front. Like the people that could produce that middle ground kind of content are going to be forced to either go up or down.
Yes. Yeah. It's not gonna take out any.
I think that's true.
Yeah, there are people who are not gonna care and who are like they're not even gonna attempt art. And then there's gonna be, in order for people to be professional artists and creatives, they're going to have to be noticeably different and better than AI in order to be seen as artists. Which is a cool it's a cool calling and it's a cool adventure to go on and say, you know what, we are gonna John Henry this piece and we're gonna freaking try to beat this machine. Yeah.
Which he did.
Yes, he did.
He did beat it.
And then he died. Which is fine. We can
The sacrificial. I guess the way that I would perceive John Henry.
We're all gonna die.
How does he die?
Well, we were gonna die
He
anyway.
dies of like exhaustion from carving through a mountain bare hand, like with like a pickaxe.
But they don't tell the machine story. That's the difference.
It's not called Machine.
No, it's not called machine.
It's not called.
That's true.
It's called
John Henry.
That's
damn
right.
it.
Because humans want to think about humans.
Yeah.
Well, I saw this thing. It was like this. What was it? It was in some St. Joseph book I was reading, and I was like, I've never heard that. That's really great. Super simple. Like loves like. It was talking about love, and it was like we like things that are like us. It's like why we like human beings because
We like dogs because their eyes are oriented towards us like ours are.
I mean, yeah, stuff like that, and the, like personalities, like because part of beauty is harmony, and so if something's likeness harmonizes with your likeness, we like the same things, we should be friends.
Yeah.
And I love you, like, but so I found that interesting. It's like that's just really simple. That totally checks out, and it's like I don't like AI stuff because there's a disharmony between its origin and mine, and I'm not here to serve computers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I know. I think that's great. I think it's important. So, like, obviously, this conversation is going in all sorts of places. And I think that it should be expected. It's very complicated. We have multiple feelings about it. We're in the middle of the Industrial Revolution here. We're trying to see which way is up, which way is down. We're trying to figure out and work this out as artists. But I think there are some important questions to ask ourselves. So, like, number one, which I think a lot of artists will resonate with, is just the ethics of using this thing. Number two is, are there good ways to use it right now? Number three, what does it mean for storytelling and filmmaking in the future? And I'd just like to talk about those categories. So I think let's talk about ethics, the ethics of using AI. Because everyone knows that maybe not everyone knows, but the way these things work is they are finding consistent patterns. And these diffusion models will then generate a random noise map and then try to make the random noise map cohere to multi-sampled different images where it understands categories. Now, I'm an artist. I'm not a guy who's a technical guy, but that's basically how it works. It generates a random noise image, and then you say, make this a dog, and then it tries to find something that looks like a dog within that diffusion model based on all of these other images of dog, insofar as it understands what a dog is. And because of that, it's trained on tons of copyrighted art and images, like that humans have made, that these organizations have taken without permission and then trained these models on. So there's implicit copyright violation in all of these models. And even Adobe, which has said that it is the ethical one because it's trained on its stock sources, it isn't perfectly clean. They've found that they did use copyrighted material. And they may have cleaned it up now. We'll see. I don't know. Don't sue me. I have no idea. But this is what I heard. So just how do we feel? Because I have my thoughts on this. How do we feel about the copyright violation and the sort of like intellectual property of it all?
I mean, I think that this is part of why AI generated things in finals is not the way to go. I mean, it's like in going back to our discussion around like using something like Google Images for inspiration or building a mood board out of something from other artists' work. It's part of the artistic act is to observe and transform. And so if the AI model is doing that part,
yes,
and then you stop it there, and then you create your own from that, I don't see too much different from what it's doing in the compression of what the artistic act would be.
Yeah.
If you don't bring it all the way to final. So maybe that's a little bit.
So you're basically saying you think it's fundamentally doing a similar process as a human artist is.
I think you could argue that. Yeah. Like that's what I think is maybe the combination of the ethical use and the question of ethics within it is what purpose are you using the AI for? Is it for exploration and idea development, or is it to like get you to a final product? Because I think if you just generate stuff and then you put it on a t-shirt or something and it pulled from somebody's copyrighted artwork, that's very much more a copyright problem in some capacity than is you have it generate stuff and then you go, oh, those are cool ideas. And now I'm going to go over here and make my art. I think it can be, when used right, it's a compression of the exploration process of
it's just quickening. It's a
artistic
calculator to help you in this exploration process. How do you feel about the...
Yeah, I guess I'm only kind of realizing in real time that when it first came out, I was like really into experimenting with like image, not so much the image generating by typing, but like I think in Midjourney you could just pick two photos and it would kind of like proton accelerate, bash them together and come up with something. And I thought I could get some unique results from that.
Yeah.
Over time, I just kind of lost interest in it. And it seems like for me, it's kind of my use of it keeps getting earlier in the process.
Yeah.
Learning Blender, it really understands. It's been super useful to like, if you need to kind of learn a program really quickly, I still think it would probably be better to watch, like a whole tutorial and get a general sense of a program, but as a by needs basis, like I want to make a bowl in Blender, and it will give you all the hotkeys. So it's helping me learn hotkeys. So there's that side of it. And then, I'll say things like for research, like I have an interest in this and this and this. Is there anything you can think of I could go find, like a book? That's actually how I found the Sondheim book, because I was like, oh, like I like these things and I want to research
read
that
more stuff like this.
And it was like it sources a lot of good books and stuff. And so that's an even earlier bit of it, but I'll still use it at times later on. But I find it more open. I find myself more involved by it being earlier. So that concept area is so really where all those kind of like, it could be anything. Like, let's try this or that.
I think regarding the sort of like, because I agree with you, those early stages of the creative process, that's clearly where a lot of AI utilization makes a lot of sense. Like, I'll have a concept and I'll want to explain it to someone. And so I can use AI to say, like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Like that's not something I'm shipping out and sending and getting paid for. Like that's not what it is. But what it is it's like it's helpful in those early stages to say, I have this idea and this is sort of what it feels like. Can we and let's steer it in this direction. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't think that that's fundamentally something that would be like an ethical concern. Regarding the use of like ChatGPT or like chatbots and all of that to help you as research assistants and or like do translations or like compress documents and give you bullet points. I think that's dope. I have no problem with that at all. Even though it's technically trained on copyrighted data, it does make sense to me that this is like an aggregator of information. It's like super helpful. I don't think that I think that there's a serious potential to say that training on copyrighted images is a copyright violation, and it was wrong at the early stages. I am glad and happy that Adobe is at least trying to make clean models where permissions were granted in order for them to train their models. I think that's excellent. That's awesome. I think that all of that being said, the cat is so far out of the bag on this, and Pandora's box is completely wide open, and there's no going back. I think Adobe's building AI tools into Adobe.
Right.
Everything, your phone will be full of generated, like super high fidelity generated videos that will be made by 7-year-olds in like 10 years. It'll be movies generated at the tap of a thumb, you know. It's not, we can't put that cat back in the bag. Is that a expression?
Yeah.
I've used
Cat's
so
out of
many
the bag,
idioms here.
It's so far out of the bag.
Yeah. Okay. So you just can't put it.
It's too far.
You got to put that cat. You can't put that cat back in. That cat is wild. You know. So I think that we're sort of beyond I think it's basically we're beyond the ability to contend with the ethics of how this will be used. It is being used. And that's that. As far as like places where it can be used in the process right now, I think what you're talking about with using like ChatGPT to help you train on software, I use it in that way too. I'll use it basically as a research assistant. I do a lot of screenwriting. I will use it as a research assistant. I will never let it write a single line of dialogue in any of my movies.
Right.
I may use it to help me translate if I'm writing in foreign languages.
Right.
Like I'll use it as sort of like a writing buddy to compress information and feed me. Right. But I will never let it put ink on paper.
Yeah. Like a mathematician would use a calculator.
Yeah, right.
I
think
they wouldn't. I don't know. Some mathematicians are probably really against. I don't know.
Yeah. You know, I think that the other places where it's really useful in the pipeline right now is taking out the tedium of some of the like actually annoying parts of creative work, like in visual effects, like rotoscoping. Rotoscoping sucks.
Yeah.
It's a rote thing where you have to frame by frame cut people out. And I used to I rotoscoped ever since I was like 11.
Yeah.
And I would go frame by frame and I'd trace things and cut images and I'd do all of that. And that sucks.
Yeah.
And it can now do it.
Well,
and that's great.
Can I use an analogy?
Yeah.
So if you say time is money, so let's just say you had $10 to make a video.
Yeah. I wish I did.
You know, we're just and you have to rotoscope.
Yeah.
But that would take $5 to do it by hand.
Yeah.
You could pay the $5 and you only have $5 left to do everything else. And I guess the negative thing you could do is use AI to do it, and you only have to pay $1.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I don't have to. I can just like make more money by not doing anything additional. To that.
Right.
I think it's. Or you could do, I'm going to use the AI to do the rotoscoping. Now I have like $9 and I'm going to use that $9 to do something really special rather than, I just save $5. I can just make this thing with $5 because, you know, like to me, it's like that opens a space. You're doing these things that are rote and you apply the AI to like get them out of the way and they're not going to like, and then you have space to like do something really special. But if it just turns into like a money-making enterprise where you're just like, I can just do AI everything, and I'm raking in the dough. It's like, to me, I perceive it as this takes care of these things that don't really matter that much, and now I have some freedom. I have limitations in time and money,
Yeah.
but now I have some space to do something really special. And sometimes you don't have the space because you're spending all the
Yeah.
time rotoscoping.
Yeah, and some of those things are clear, right? Like a rotoscoping. Now there are great people who are excellent world-class rotoscopers.
Yeah.
They probably don't like this situation.
Yeah.
I recognize that. That's
Yeah.
part of the Industrial Revolution and the consequences of the Industrial Revolution. I understand that. And the real fear is what you're talking about, where the studios, Disney will come and all of the evil overlords of Disney will come and they'll say, we want to print money. We're going to make Marvel 5000 movie number 5000, and we just press a button and it spits it out. We've spent nothing and we just rake in cash.
Right.
That's Darth Vader.
Yeah,
That's what we're worried about.
Yeah, right.
But that's not a realistic thing because no one's going to go to that.
Right.
No one.
It's gonna.
The temptation.
They'll go to it once and never again.
Yeah, and then they'll never go to it again. And I do think like that is an industry concern that like anybody would have, like that the corporations will use it to reduce the livelihoods of people. Some of that will happen. Like it will happen. But on the other end of the spectrum, the opportunities AI affords you is like there's this legendary quote from George Lucas where he was like talking about special effects and the dawn of visual effects on the computer, and he was saying that one day in the future a teenager in their garage will make like, I don't remember what he said, like huge epics, huge epic movies. And I think he might have said like a Lawrence of Arabia, like he'll be able to make it in his garage. We're getting there. And I think that part of that is opportunity. Because if a kid doesn't have to spend years rotoscoping something,
Right.
and he can learn the programs faster
Yes.
through the aid of computers. Right. If even something as simple as like browser-based visual effects and CG programs that he would have access to, so he doesn't need a $20,000 computer, right? Like those are opportunities for artists.
Right.
My concern is that they will, if the artist isn't trained, he'll never be able to make Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes.
That's the thing. Is like we have to, culturally, we have to prioritize the good art, and we have to share the good art, and we have to make sure that good art is seen as sacred. Otherwise, these people learning on this will just be making more brain rot constantly.
They don't have roots. Well, it's similar to like that whole idea of like all these, Steve Jobs or people in Silicon Valley that produce like iPads and all this don't let their kids use them.
Yeah, Steve Jobs said he wouldn't. Yeah.
Okay, well, why? And so that seems like he has an understanding that if you introduce these things to an unformed mind, it's going to control them rather than them having agency and using it in a way where they can be discerning and stuff.
That's like with my kids. Like my kids all want to draw. They've seen me experiment with AI, and I don't really let them use it. Like ever. Yeah. Occasionally as a joke, I'll let them use it and we'll laugh and giggle. But if my son comes to me and he's like, hey, I want to like draw this picture. I have this great idea. Can we use AI to make it? I'm like, no, you can't. You have to draw.
Yeah.
Get good at drawing.
Yes.
And then maybe one day you can use AI.
Yeah.
It's like you can't throw a kid in a super car and just be like, go crash it. Like you're not going to be able to drive. So I think that's good formationism.
And I think, Peter, your analogy of the $10 video is the process by which that polarization happens. Is the people that say, okay, great, I can do it for $5 now and I'll pocket $4 and I can get this thing done for $1. Is the noise content. And then you have the people that see it as, okay, now I have $9 to work with. I wonder what I can do now. Yeah. Like that's where the elevated content. So like that process of discerning, how am I going to use AI in my workflow? Am I going to use it to just try to make capital benefit from it and not perfect my art? That becomes the noise content. And then you have the ones where they're going to use it as a stepping stone and think about bigger problems. Right. And then you have the higher end content. So it's really interesting how the same thing can split in those two different directions.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's like a question that like I think a lot of like agencies like ours like have to contend with. Because there's obviously like there are going to be agencies and there are agencies and I've observed them where they're like, their core end of what they desire is like is just the marketing. They don't care about the art of the thing. We're a production company that aims towards creating beautiful things and things with lasting benefit. Like that's our goal. There are a lot of people who are like, cool, we'll make 10,000 fake influencer videos where it just with horrible AI voices, and by sheer process of just like shooting crap out into the universe, will hook more people onto this brand. And we don't care. What they don't realize, what they make, that's short-term benefit. It's going to work on a short-term benefit.
It strikes me as very short-term. People catch on. They think people are dumb.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. And then, but the brands that are really serious about intentional communication of their brand and who they are will only leverage AI insofar as it serves to make their brand powerful year over year over year over year.
Yeah,
and that really does require human attention. Like at the present, certainly it requires human attention. And I think I would say, if I was a betting man, I'd say it will always require human guidance, governance. I personally don't think AI will ever get to that ephemeral plane that humans can often get to. Now, there are a lot of people who are as bad as AI. There are a lot of people who make videos that are worse than AI. But the people who are real artists and people who really are good storytellers are going to beat AI. That's my opinion.
I agree. And going to the fork in the road thing, like on LinkedIn and things, in response to AI, you see this kind of thing where it's like, well, I know 10 AI programs. Do you know, like, well, I know 20. I know 30. Like, I know how to use this thing. That's one way.
Yeah.
But I think going back to this, like actually hearkening back to something Seth said in the previous podcast about how principles can be program agnostic, that things go, if you have these fundamental principles, they kind of apply to everything. Animation principles could apply to 3D animation, same as 2D. There's a
3D
difference.
principles apply to what would be good if you're making a live action movie. Right.
So to me, it's like, okay, that's one way, is like learning about AI and really understanding it. The other is like, instead of going up, like going down, in the sense that learn these fundamental principles really, really well.
Yes.
For example, with Blender, I was adverse to learning 3D because it was frightening to me, but Seth warmed me up to it. And then AI helped me a lot with just sheer grunt work of like figuring out how to navigate this massive program.
Yeah.
And once I was like comfortable enough in it to like get around and stuff and I could start building things, all the principles from like 2D, like anatomy, constructing the human figure, all these things started being applied to what I was doing.
Yeah, like because you learned sculpture.
It was sculpture.
And you're applying your traditional knowledge of sculpture into the program.
But getting to that place in the program was like a journey, and the AI just helped. I mean, so did YouTube, so did Seth and you guys, like, to get to that. But it was, it can, it's like a spaceship. You get help travel to this other place, but
no,
I
like that though too. I like the idea of like, you can just keep stacking. You can just chase the rabbit trail of what AI can be. It's like, oh, this one's got lip sync. Oh, this one's got good consistency. Oh, this one's got this, or this one's got that. It's like, dude, have you ever met a human? Have you ever
met a human?
No, met a human. Have you ever
you ever met a human?
Have you ever observed the human story? Have you ever do you care about human emotion? Do you care about like story structure?
Yeah.
Do you care about how to tell somebody something that happened and then move hearts with it? Because I don't give a crap if your AI looks kind of real. Mm-hmm. I can already make stuff that looks kind of real. That's not the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part is like going deep and saying, how do I communicate the human experience in the context of this medium? Yeah. That's the hard part. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, you can make a great image. Good for you. Mm-hmm. Does it mean anything? And I think that that's like something that like, yes, and there will be AI artists and that will move my heart eventually. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see it. I would love to see that if it happened. But I think like there's a reason why Disney would bring like deer into the studio so people would see deer so that they could do Bambi.
Right.
Because you have to observe things.
Yes.
And I think that part of sinking your roots down is like, yes, I should read classic literature. Yes, I should watch classic films. Yes, I should observe human stories and read things and know things about people because people care about people.
Right.
They don't care about your weird anime stuff that you made with AI because you can now quick.
Right.
They care about Hayao Miyazaki, who struggled to condense reality into like this beautiful little thing and share it with you. That's what they care about. They care about the story.
Was that the third thing?
I think
What was the third thing that we had said?
I think we have talked about like the ethics of it a little bit. Do we have the answer for it? No. We've talked about the ethics about it a little bit. We've talked about like how it can be used in a workflow now. Like I think there are there's more to talk about there. Like is it cool to use AI to lip sync stuff sometimes? Yeah, maybe. Like but it's not. It sort of doesn't matter. It's like, can it be used as a tool? Yeah, but I'm not like too excited about any particular tool.
I just find it interesting when people get very alarmed when something new like this happens because it's like, oh, I can't use AI at all because of this ethical thing. And it's like, okay, fair enough. Like, but you have a smartphone, like, you know, there's ethical questions about where that came from.
Yeah.
We use computers. Where did these, like, I don't know. It's very, I don't mean to evade, but it's just like the interconnected how this world with all these products that we use to do stuff. It's very strange to me to isolate one thing and villainize it.
It's like the pianola, the like player piano that played by itself is like 100-year-old, more than that, year-old invention. It's like no one has them in their living room.
Yeah.
A lot of people still have pianos, you know. I think like there's like, yes, it's like we can't be afraid of technology. It's going to change things. We have to be adaptable. We have to hold to first principles so that we can evolve to master the new tech that comes. But then there's also this ephemeral part of art, which is like, we don't care if a player piano plays Tchaikovsky. We care if somebody plays Tchaikovsky. I think that that's part of it too, is we really do care that there's like a ensoulment in the art and that people are part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a thing. We did have a third category.
The future.
Yeah, the future. What do we hope from AI? I think my hope for AI is basically that it is a tool among tools.
Yes.
I think that's it. And I think my hope for AI too would be that school and art, people who are teaching new artists and people who are advocates for the art, especially filmmaking, where like film and animation is where we're centered, is that we would prioritize passing like what is good on to the next generation so they can be inspired by what is good. Don't be afraid of the new stuff we don't understand, but make sure that we're sharing with them things that are good. And I would say don't give kids AI too soon. I remember, so there's a guy who used to work here, Dylan, and he had this story, which I loved, which was he would work construction. And new guys coming on the job site, he wouldn't let them use nail guns. Until they demonstrated to him they knew how to use a hammer. And they hated him for it. They were like, what the heck are you talking about? This is a waste of time. But he made them learn how to use a hammer, and then they got to use the nail gun so that they understood the process.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the same thing. It's like, don't give a kid Mid-Journey.
Yeah.
Because it's not a good calculator, just because he'll never be a good artist if you give it to him too soon.
Yeah.
Because it will lead to complacency. I think that would be my hope, is that it's a tool among tools. I hope it lets me do compositing a little faster. Maybe it can help me out a little bit in some rough sculpts on like an animation thing, or maybe it can help me storyboard faster, like that kind of stuff. But my hope would be that it never replaces or takes a place of primacy as far as like the content we're ingesting. Well, hopes for you guys?
Your point about the complacency in art, using an AI tool, my hope would be that it doesn't like create just like a deadness to beauty.
Sure. Oh, I see.
You know, like you kind of like, okay, I've seen it. You know, like where you can walk through like an art museum and be like, okay, like this isn't really as good as what I've made.
Yeah.
You know, like if it gets to the point where it is so saturated that people lose their sense of wonder.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I do think that is a danger. I do think it's a danger. Yeah, I might be a Luddite, but I think I think it was a better world where we would sit down and prioritize watching a good narrative movie that someone had spent years making versus sitting down at the end of the day and just scrolling forever random garbage that's fed to us in a vertical format.
Right.
I think that is like, I think that technically it would be better to watch Lawrence of Arabia or like The Last Emperor or like The Sound of Music than it would be to watch 15,000 reels about life hacks.
You know,
that's my there's utility in that, but it is definitely a little bit of a drug.
I just realized that the vertical format is a sign of an individualistic society. I never thought about this before.
You're right.
Like the horizontal format is designed for community and interaction.
Oof.
And the vertical format is about me. And,
that makes sense.
And like it is literally designed.
Vertical can show one person, horizontal can show many people.
Yeah.
And granted, it's not a perfect analogy, but like it's more true that when you're framing for vertical.
Yep.
Like even in this podcast, our wide angle doesn't really work for all three of us when you're in a vertical format. Mm-hmm. That's
interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
Hitting them with the bangers.
Yeah, big bang, big bang. That's where all this started.
What are your hopes for AI?
Well, so far with AI, it seems like what I notice. Maybe I'm just like an open-ended individual that I just kind of like to think about possibilities because I'm very hesitant. I do have moral like standards that I like stand for when I really need to, but I just kind of like, it seems to me the pattern is that when people have problems with AI, what they bring up is really not so much about AI in general as a particular way that it's being used.
Yes.
And which I usually am like, oh, this AI has 6 fingers, like AI is bad. And it's like, yeah, 6 fingers is bad. Like that particular use of it is not well done. But that's a particular way to use AI, you know. I've had a few experiences where I've used it where it kind of like inverts, you know, but if people use AI, it's gonna like, you're gonna narrow your window of like, you're just gonna rely on only it, you know, and your world's gonna get smaller. But I asked it something about textiles a while back. I'm like, where could I research textiles? I want to make these like wool scapulars, and it just was giving me it somehow was like, oh, you should go to this place in Gettysburg, and there's like a natural textile place that sells natural textiles. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. So I like go to this place and meet this old lady, and we had this like hour-long conversation. And it was like, she was like a Baptist, and she's like, what is this? This like Catholic scapular. And she's like, has like we have like this emotional experience.
That's great.
And I was like, thanks, AI. You know, like, you know, it's like, how do you, to me, it's just like, you could spin off in any which way.
There's some weird uses like that, right? Where it's like, I don't know how to sort. So there may be a movie I'm working on right now about a historical person. This historical person may have about 40 seconds of their voice recorded that I have access to. I may have trained a vocal model on that voice in order that it could read me that person's letters.
Yeah, I think that's...
And I could listen to them. Is that good or bad? I don't know what it is. But did it help me feel like this person was reading his letters to me? Yeah. Did I feel like I knew that person better and I could hear their voice? Yeah. That's a weird human thing. Mm-hmm. Is it really him? No. Is it a strange It's a strange monster I summoned and created, sort of, but it did help me feel like I understood the humanity of that person better.
Yeah.
I honestly think that's the way it is. I think like there are some like movie studios right now and some filmmakers who are being more open about their use. Like The Brutalist is coming out. It's a movie that everyone says is amazing. I haven't seen it yet. But they used AI for certain parts of it, and the director's like, yeah, it's a tool. Why are you being weird? You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that my hope is that one day it is just a tool. Why are you being weird?
Yeah.
You know, like don't freak out about everything you don't understand. I get that. And I just want to make sure that people know that this tool is powerful. It's a powerful tool. So like you have to be equally formed about it.
Yeah. I had this image in my head a while ago of like a mech suit.
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Stuff like that. It was like one of these mech suits.
Yeah.
And it just like, this is so dumb. It opens up and it's just a dove operating it, you know, like the Holy Spirit.
Well, I think we should all hope that would be what we bring to it.
Yeah, like it's like this like really overwhelming technological like powerful entity.
Yeah.
And then it's just like and it's just like a dove sitting on a chair.
I like it. Back in philosophy.
Like just the idea that something gentle and holy or like whatever could operate. Just the contrast of that I think is funny, but it's also like that would be amazing.
We should make like 20 AI images of that and put it in the podcast. One thing that I back in college I had, and I'm old, so this was way before this was possible. Any AI crap was possible, but I had this short story that I was working on about this guy who was in this bubble, and he was in the bubble, and it was like a reverse matrix thing where he would get plugged in, but then the world would just generate around him whatever he desired, and it would read what he wanted and read the desires of the man and then project that out, and then he was in that virtual world. And I was working on this. It was whatever. It never got
like the ILM dome.
Yeah, it was like or the volume. Like yeah. But it was like completely immersed. Like you are just like your ego is projected out.
Yeah.
Whatever little animal desires you have, it would just feed this person and stuff. We're getting there. Like that's actually not that far off, and it's probably going to happen. And so but the concern with that is like if this is all just self-serving nonsense, you're going to get trapped by it. You're going to get played. So I think don't be the like AI. I think AI should be the tool, not you.
Yeah.
Like, don't be a tool.
Yeah. Don't be a tool.
Don't be a tool.
Yes.
Like I think that's it. Like it's like you should be the master of this thing.
Yes.
And I guess the real thing is check back with us in 2 years when AI is going crazy. And
oh my gosh.
I can't even imagine.
Are we
going to
watch this and be like, oh,
I feel like
man.
we should.
Yeah.
And we're all going to be
check-in every 2 years.
We're all going to be like half Android. And
this is so funny what we said.
Well, thanks, guys. I think that's been a long, strange conversation about AI, and I wouldn't imagine any other thing would be possible. So if you're interested in more of our opinions, reflections on different things in the industry, creative industry, or any of our projects or any stories or behind the scenes anecdotes we have to share, tune in to Heralds and Fools, where we talk shop.
Yo.
That's it, everybody. Hopefully in 2 years our agency's still open.